Hey everyone, my name is Jose and I am finally back with another video essay, this time finally talking about the OnePlus situation. So you might or might not know about OnePlus and their declining fan base because of certain decisions they have made over the years. OnePlus debuted their first phone in 2014 with the OnePlus One, and many people liked that phone because it was a flagship killer. It had a top-of-the-line processor for significantly less than other phones with the same processor. This alone and other characteristics created the OnePlus fanbase, which consisted of Android enthusiasts who liked that OnePlus was cheaper than others. They had a really clean Android skin called OxygenOS, which was clean and simple, just like how real-life Oxygen is really standard and simple. But then in 2018, things got worse for the OnePlus community. The OnePlus 6T removed the headphone jack, phones started to get more expensive, they introduced the Nord phones in 2020, which people thought OnePlus was branching out too much. Also in 2020, Carl Pei, the founder of OnePlus, had left, which signified that the brand was having internal struggles and such. And OxygenOS 11 in 2021 is when people started to not like the Android skin because it wasn't as clean and simple as before. Also, fast forward to today, the OnePlus 10T just dropped and it doesn't even have an alert slider like the other flagship OnePlus phones. There's just many decisions that leave people like me and the OnePlus community to think that the brand we once knew isn't the same anymore. Most of us would be disappointed that something we liked has changed into something I would describe as try hard just because OnePlus is trying to be more mainstream. So by being more mainstream, you lose the characteristics that attracted the original OnePlus fanbase, which consisted of enthusiasts who like the really simple OxygenOS skin and other things. But at the same time, being more mainstream is clearly a business strategy because you're trying to appeal to a bigger audience. So what has that left us with today? Well, besides terrible decisions like removing the alert slider, current OnePlus phones are pretty close to being mainstream. There's two reasons for that. The first is the Nord series, and the second relates to OxygenOS. So very quickly, the Nord series of phones are budget and mid-range phones made to appeal to more people because of the price range. You also get quad camera setups for these phones, which make them mainstream because other players like Samsung and Motorola also have quad camera setups for their cheap phones. And yeah, the only reason to have a quad camera setup with a mediocre main sensor, terrible ultra wide, macro, and depth sensor is just to make the design of the phone more appealing. So by doing this and making the Nord series in the first place, OnePlus is trying to go mainstream. Now on to OxygenOS. It's introducing new features like widget redesigns, control bar redesigns, and other features that in theory make it more pleasant to use. I say in theory because the OnePlus community likes a simple and clean Android skin, but these changes to OxygenOS 11, 12, and 13 make it more mainstream. I won't get too specific with these changes, just know that they keep adding things to the OS that make it better for those who want to maximize their phone use, not for those who want to just keep it simple. And this is where I will now start to make a very critical argument that I know a lot of people are not gonna like, but I feel like it's inevitable anyways. I think OnePlus should stop using OxygenOS altogether. And then you might say, what? Should they just use stock Android with no added features? No, quite the opposite. I think OnePlus should merge with Oppo. I have plenty of reasons to suggest that A, this will be a good idea, And B, it has already happened, just not officially. To explain what a merge with Oppo means, let's first explain BBK. BBK is the parent company behind smartphone brands such as OnePlus, Oppo, Vivo, Realme, and iQOO. And although all of these smartphone brands are owned by BBK, I want to point out the main brands and the subsidiary brands. The main brands are OnePlus, Oppo, and Vivo, and the subsidiary brands for these companies are Nord, Realme, and iQOO, all of which are owned by BBK. And although OnePlus themselves are an independent company, they act like a sister or subsidiary of Oppo. In 2020, Pete Lau, the co-founder of OnePlus, had rejoined Oppo as the senior vice president of OPlus, which is the majority shareholder of Oppo, OnePlus, and Realme. But it might appear that OPlus actually finances BBK, which ties it all back together. So Pete Lau, CEO of OnePlus, is also linked to BBK, which isn't a surprise at all, but it could be part of a bigger master plan to merge Oppo with OnePlus. I like what others have called this merge, the Oppofication of OnePlus, which was successful in 2021 when OnePlus employees started to work in Oppo offices under unified business management and operation. And I was one of those people who didn't like it. Why would you want Oppo to merge with OnePlus if it's seemingly gonna kill off the brand? But then OnePlus has been long dead, depending who you talk to. And now I realize why Oppo wanted to merge with OnePlus, which wasn't to make anyone mad on purpose or intentionally or anything like that. It was continuing the plan of making OnePlus go mainstream. I can't speak on behalf of the world like Europe or South America or anywhere else and determine if OnePlus is mainstream or not, but in the US, OnePlus is getting mainstream, but not quite there yet. I couldn't find any good statistics for this, but according to Market Monitor service via Counterpoint, OnePlus has 2% market share in the US Q1 2022. The US is mainly just iPhone, and if you don't have an iPhone, then you have Samsung, which is not only statistically true, but it's also kind of our culture here. At least that's how I perceive it when talking to my peers about how they got their phone and why. Anyways, it's going to be really hard for OnePlus to match Samsung or even Motorola, who have 24% and 11%. Rip LG, I would have loved to see you in the statistics page. So are OnePlus's current decisions with their phones and OS skin enough to be mainstream? Well, no, because they still need to merge with Oppo. Let me explain that. To beat Samsung, or at least be the second most popular Android manufacturer in the US, you need one thing, just one thing from Oppo. ColorOS. So ColorOS runs on Oppo phones like the Find X5 phones, and the reason I want OnePlus to have ColorOS is because that's what the American market needs. I say needs, but actually it's just really good for competition. Although I haven't tried ColorOS myself because I don't own any Oppo phones, just by looking at it, ColorOS just looks very fun to use. Especially with ColorOS 13 rolling out not that long ago. ColorOS was made to be unique to every user. ColorOS is very, very big on customization. For example, they have a good selection of always-on display icons, personalized colors in apps more than Material You, third-party integration with Spotify and Snapchat, and other features. They even have Omoji, which is very close to Memoji from Apple. Okay, so cool. They have a lot of customization. That doesn't explain why you want Oppo to merge with OnePlus. Well, here's the thing. It's a business strategy for the American market. In the US, we have Apple as a dominant player, and it's literally part of our culture. Designed in California, I only use iMessage and FaceTime to communicate and all of that nonsense. But then again, iOS is really easy to use for a lot of people because of its simplicity that hasn't really changed over the years. And I guess people have become really accustomed to how it looks and feels. And when iOS added customization features like widgets, Memoji, lock screen customization, it made every iOS user feel like their iPhone was finally unique to them. So with ColorOS, I feel like that's one of the closest Android skins that takes a lot of inspiration from iOS on the customization aspect of things. I mean, yeah, a lot of what you can do on Oppo phones can be done on non-Oppo phones, but I feel like Oppo just takes a few steps forward across and in front of the competition. This is mostly seen with the dedicated widgets panel, automatic pixelation of sensitive information like usernames, these smart notifications that don't distract you in video calling apps. And do I need to remind you about emoji? So I would say ColorOS already complements Material You very well because it's adding more to user personalization. iOS was never huge on customization, but now it is with its little yet significant things they have introduced to it. And that's what the American market needs. An Android skin that works and feels fluid like iOS without looking like it 100%. Because if you can't afford an iPhone at $700 or even the SE at around $450, then will you settle on a $220 phone that will feel as fluid as that iPhone? I feel like yes, with enough marketing and word spreading, the American people will be inclined to go with this iPhone clone because in reality, it's actually kind of fun to use. Because when people use their phone, they want it to feel fun and unique to them, which I feel like Apple has miraculously achieved with iMessage and FaceTime and the whole Apple ecosystem of products. I'm not saying OnePlus or Oppo needs to develop an ecosystem for their phones. I'm just saying that they need their phones to feel fun. And that's been achieved with the amount of customization you can get on an Oppo phone with ColorOS. And I'm not saying they need to make a messaging service like iMessage or anything like that. You just need to find a way to show off the customization that a user did on their Oppo phone and share it to non-Oppo phones. And by doing that, you kind of show off in a universal way that, yeah, my Oppo phone is actually fun to use and stuff like that. But either way, I feel like having ColorOS on OnePlus phones, or even just start off with the Nord series, can make the OnePlus phones look and feel more appealing again. Even though ColorOS and OxygenOS are still somewhat different right now, I feel like having ColorOS on OnePlus phones can save the OnePlus brand from dying altogether. Because would you rather have OnePlus continue their way that they're doing right now and them dying off later because no one knew their name and no one in the American market was interested in them? Or would you rather have OnePlus be very daring and introduce ColorOS to their phones and try to just bring a fun OS experience to the American market because it looks a lot like iOS, which is already what Americans pretty much prefer anyways? I mean, Samsung has also been trying really hard to build their own ecosystem. I won't get into that today, but personally, I will say that One UI, their Android skin, is just trying really hard to be mainstream, and they're doing it totally wrong. I mean, building your own ecosystem to get more market share isn't a bad idea, maybe for other markets, but in the American market, I think the American market's really picky and One UI just won't do it. Okay then, anything else? ColorOS should come to OnePlus phones and OnePlus should merge with Oppo. Well, yeah, but spoiler alert, it already happened. Before Oppo considered merging with OnePlus, they had already been sharing assets for years. A combination of similar investors in both Oppo and OnePlus, but also sharing supply chain systems and even factory production lines. However, Oppo has said that OnePlus is independent because they have different R&D, economy, daily operations, and other things. Even though Oppo literally gained OnePlus's partnership with Hasselblad just because they're under the same overarching umbrella. But remember that Pete Lau and OPlus have made the Oppofication of OnePlus closer than ever. And even before these events, Oppo and OnePlus have shared similar phone designs. The OnePlus One and Oppo Find 7a in 2014, OnePlus X and Oppo A30, OnePlus 6 and Oppo R15 Pro, and even the 2022 OnePlus Nord N20 SE looks like the Oppo A77. It's because OnePlus is essentially borrowing a lot of things from Oppo, from the production line, and even giving Oppo their own Hasselblad licensing. Not only does Oppo give designs to OnePlus, but in China, OnePlus has already been Oppofied. In 2021, with the release of the OnePlus 9 phones, the Chinese market discontinued its use of HydrogenOS, which was the Chinese exclusive of OxygenOS, and they started using ColorOS. So that means in China, OnePlus has been Oppofied, which makes sense for a few reasons. The first is that Oppo already has pretty big market share in China, with 19%, with Honor and Huawei being the top. Not only that, but the Oppofication of OnePlus in China literally means that OnePlus is a subsidiary or shared asset of Oppo. Because why would you switch Oppo phones to HydrogenOS if ColorOS is already more developed in it? So then you switch the OnePlus phones to ColorOS. And that's not entirely a bad idea either. Although OnePlus and Oppo are supposed to be independent brands from each other, OxygenOS has been trying to import features from ColorOS since like 2 years ago. OxygenOS 13 brought a watermorphic design to the skin, which, guess what, was also featured in ColorOS 13 as part of their aquamorphic design. Emoji got introduced and a few other Oppo-specific features. And even hardware-based features like Oppo's SuperVOOC charging came to the OnePlus phones because they share the same production lines. But don't you get that this decision is literally inevitable? In 2021, Pete Lau even said that OxygenOS and ColorOS would be unified in the future. And for good reason. If you're already porting over features from ColorOS to OxygenOS, then just unify them. Merging ColorOS and OxygenOS means that Oppo and OnePlus phones are going to be more similar than different, and that means security updates and bug fixes are going to be rolled out faster. You get a faster bug-free experience if they just merge them together, because working on one OS is a lot more manageable long-term than working on two. And when they successfully merge both OSs, I think it will be good for the American market, where people can realize that they can have a fun OS experience with OnePlus phones that mimics iOS in some ways. And maybe, just maybe, Oppo phones can be sold in the American market, but I do doubt that. Technically, they can, but introducing a new phone brand to this market will not go well for carriers because carriers did not believe in the Nothing Phone 1 breaking sales. So yeah, it's a pretty similar situation. And again, for good reason, because we as a society are stuck on iPhone. Now, I guess it's a good time to finally wrap up my thoughts. OnePlus is dead. OnePlus is dead in the sense that they don't appeal to the Android enthusiast fan base anymore because they started going mainstream and made decisions around that. They made the Nord line, started porting features from ColorOS to OxygenOS. Carl Pei left the company. The 10T doesn't have an alert slider, and whatever other reasons you want to say. OnePlus is gone, and they will never go back to their roots because it's too much of an investment. So instead, they will finish what they started by introducing ColorOS to now OnePlus phones, and hopefully that attracts a larger consumer base worldwide where people can realize that they can have a really fun and unique OS experience with their phone, which people want because, iPhone has that. It's reminiscent of an iPhone iOS experience, and people love that. Does that mean that OnePlus is a subsidiary of Oppo? Well, they've been acting like that for a long time, but now I don't think it even matters anymore. It's not like being independent from Oppo is gonna fix anything in the future if they're not gonna listen to Android enthusiasts at all. And it especially doesn't help that Samsung is the top player in a lot of different markets, and they too, Samsung is trying to build their own ecosystem and try to make their phone experience fun. And now with OnePlus and ColorOS, it can be seen as a vivid phone with a lot of customization that is just really fun to use, rather than a simple, clean OS experience, which really isn't made for mainstream audiences. I don't think this merge at all is gonna hurt the OnePlus brand if they have enough marketing that ColorOS is, well, full of color and it's just a better experience than One UI or even iOS. Marketing can change a lot in public perception. You just have to do it right. The OS is just one layer in having a good phone experience because remember, there's the design, the battery, the cameras, and other things, but at the same time, the OS can go under the radar a lot of the time. So if you market this Nord phone for like $250 and specifically about having an OS experience that's gonna remind people a lot about iPhone, then I think you can change the game for your company. People like customization and stock Android. So if you have more customization in place of stock Android, then I think this is your second best option to this approach. But hey, that's just all me, I guess, because I really don't know if the Oppofication of OnePlus is gonna do anything for it in the market, or if people are gonna continue to not care because of the iPhone. If you enjoyed this video, then please give me a like. And if you didn't like what you see, well, you know what? That's too bad. Enjoy being a OnePlus user while you can, because this merge can happen at any moment now. Any moment. But if you did like what you see, please like, comment, and subscribe. And hopefully this merge between Oppo and OnePlus is seamless, because if it's a total disaster for the company, then you know what? That was on them. I really do think that ColorOS has a lot more potential than OxygenOS long term, so embracing this merge instead of fighting it can actually kind of help you see how ColorOS for OnePlus is actually probably going to save the brand from dying. Because remember, if OnePlus does actually die, then we'd have less competition in the smartphone market, and and I wouldn't want that to happen, even though OnePlus phones and Oppo phones are becoming more similar than each other. Well, still don't want it to die either way. I still am very mixed if OnePlus is actually going to do any marketing in the US about having ColorOS and how it's actually better or mimics iOS in some ways, because I think you should take my advice. I think you should market ColorOS as much as you can, because that's pretty good for the American market, because a lot of people already like iOS. So if you have an iOS experience on a $220 phone, because it looks and feels like iOS, I think it could really save your brand and bring a lot of attention to your brand. But again, an OS is just one layer to the many layers of a phone, including camera performance, having an alert slider or not, and other relevant material. I'm not even sure what OnePlus is gonna do when they have ColorOS to make their phones different than Oppo phones, because remember, they already have the same production lines and same technologies and assets and anything. So I hope OnePlus phones can at least still have some characteristics different than the Oppo phones. Maybe OnePlus can just focus on performance and Oppo do other things. I don't know, but they still need to keep some brand identity worldwide, because you know, you can buy both an Oppo phone and a OnePlus phone, so you gotta decide what makes the phones different. Or you know, they can just kill off the OnePlus brand entirely across the world and only keep it in the American market, and just literally rebrand future Oppo phones as OnePlus phones and sell it here, because again, the American market is picky and they kind of don't like foreign names like Oppo or Huawei. So I guess you can kill off the brand and let it live here as a secret identity for Oppo, which has been for a long time, but then again, I have no idea what they're doing with this anyways. I don't know. So yeah, thanks for watching this pretty interesting video essay. It's been a while, but yeah, I've been focusing on shorts because video essays for topics don't always cross my mind, but when they do, I hope to do them really well, like I have been doing them so far. So yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know about your thoughts on this. I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of things to say about Oppo and OnePlus and OxygenOS and ColorOS, but yeah, just consider what I said and tell me if you think it's a good idea, if it's not a good idea, the future of OnePlus as a brand separate from Oppo, even though they're merged. I don't know, just tell me anything. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.